Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to another episode of Tuesday Takes with Tre'Shon Diaz. I'm your host, Kevin Knight, as well. And of course, today's show is presented by FanDuel, and we are here to, unfortunately, talk about the Falcons hitting rock bottom again, Tre'Shon. They've hit rock bottom twice now. And I know there's been some debate about this after another absolute drubbing by one of the worst teams in the NFL. A lot of people, seem to think that the Panthers' loss was worse. I'm firmly on the side of that this game was clearly worse, but I'm curious where you come down on this debate.
Same behind, different cheek. I don't it's like I'm with you. Like, I don't really care about the Panthers. So yeah, I think the Falcons is way worse. You're talking about a difference between losing to the Bills and losing to like the 1-6 Dolphins. So yeah, I Carolina, sure, they got blown out too, but that was by the second or first best quarterback in the league, depending on how you want to look at him.
Yeah, it's a very different situation, and at least the Panthers have shown that they're a relatively competent team this year, even though they're clearly not like a contending playoff team or anything like that. They were after that Falcons game, they rattled off 3 straight wins, so they were clearly on the upswing, and the Falcons got taken advantage of. But that seems to be a theme this year, that the Falcons are kind of just ripe for the taking by these teams that are struggling, and it's a worrying trend. And we're back in this situation where the Falcons just basically seem to really just look past these teams. This is now the two most winnable games on your schedule that you've gotten blown out in both of them, and that is very unusual, Tre'Shon. This is not something. This is like a new level of falconing that we've discovered. Like, it's almost impossible to go from like basically dominating the Bills, who just dropped a 40 burger on those Panthers that blew you out 30-0. So how about transitive wins in that situation? That's a whole mess. But you go, this team is such an enigma to me. And, I think a lot of people question the talent. And I think this week on offense, obviously the deck was going to be a harder game. Like, I was not expecting a blowout, especially when we heard that Drake London was not going to play. I expected a ground and pound situation. Falcons maybe win by a touchdown or less, like a 1-score game. I was not expecting this to go like a crazy Falcons blowout type of direction, because you got Cousins playing his first game. Your wide receiver core is a little bit weakened. So my expectations were not crazy high. Like, I think some people would have been disappointed with even like a field goal victory against the Dolphins, but I would have been fine with that, because it's like, you just got to get some wins here. But it was so far beyond that, and it's led to all these just very difficult questions about, like, where is this team going? Is it even possible for them to contend when they can't get the layups at this point? And if you can't get the layups on your schedule, how can we expect you to win the tough games? But I mean, maybe they just need only tough games, because they seem to play their best football against the teams that are projected to beat them by the most. So I don't know where we go from here, but it's nowhere good.
Yeah, it kind of feels like, we're back to dealing with like the Arthur Smith Falcons again. Art's, I remember especially in his first year, the team got blown out like 3 or 4 times that year. There was like a 43-3 loss. There was a couple of embarrassing losses that season. And then, right after that was to Dallas, that 3-43 game. Then they got, goose egg next week, putting up 0 points, losing by 25 to New England. But they would always compete with those better teams, and they would always keep it close then. And kind of like you're saying, it feels like, that's kind of like what we're back to dealing with. And, we do have, a lot of guys still drafted from that era. And this kind of wishy-washy, volatile play has been something that we've seen, I think, manifest in different ways, but something that has like been a part of this Falcons team, for the past 5 years. They're 7-9, and then they finally broke the 7-9 curse and got to 8-9 last year, or excuse me, they're 7-10 now in this new 17-game world. But you have all these seasons back to back where you're constantly flirting with being 500, where you feel like you're gaining ground. It's 1 step forward, but then it's 2 steps back, and it it's kind of hard to pinpoint exactly what the issue is because we've seen it go across 2 coaching staffs here. But, it's clear that this team, for whatever reason, just cannot get out of its own way. And, they're having trouble just stringing together consistent, competent games. It'd be one thing if you lose multiple games in a row and you just get out executed, the other team is better, whatever. But like, we're not seeing that at all. We're just kind of seeing, a hilarious string of gaffes. And this team is just, you don't know what they're going to do next.
Yeah. There's no consistency. There's this tendency to play down to opponents. It feels like they're just not taking it seriously, which is like I don't understand how this is happening in the NFL. Like, how many examples do you need of these types of games? These types of games happen regularly in the league. Like, usually not to the same team over and over again. But, like, this is what we talked about after the Panthers game. Like, pretty much every team is going to have a stinker every year. Like, the Bills had their stinker against the Falcons. They're not immune from the stinker. It's because NFL teams are typically run by very good staffs, and despite teams like collectively maybe not being as talented as other teams, they're still all very talented. They still have playmakers. Every team's got star players. Like, you're gonna have some bad games. You're gonna get caught in a bad situation sometimes. Maybe injuries strike and you get unlucky. Like, stuff happens. It's not crazy. So the fact that you could take any game like less than seriously, given that obvious information, it really blows my mind. And I think, again, it just comes back to the attitude that this team has from top down, that they're this really good team and they're just going to take care of business. And that isn't translating to actual good play. It's like they think they can just win off vibes. And I like vibes. I'm a vibes guy, but I notoriously scout quarterbacks off vibes, but I'm also not making decisions for, billion-dollar franchises. So it's a little bit different, for me when I go off of vibes, but I'm just not really sure how to put my finger on the biggest issue here, but you kind of feel like, given the overall malaise of this team and the lack of accountability on the offensive side of the ball in particular, and don't worry, guys, we're going to talk about that. It really feels like this is Raheem Morris's mess that he's made because of the way his leadership has sort of influenced this team. Teams take on the characteristics of their head coach. This is a well-known phenomena, and it really feels like he is probably the biggest issue here. But again, it's subtle. It's not like, oh, he did this. I mean, obviously there was the challenge of that obvious first down that he did in this game. So that was obviously just a straightforward mistake. But to me, I keep coming back to, like, Zach Robinson is a huge problem, and he'll probably be the first one fired from this group. But like, it feels like it's Raheem Morris's show, and the show is bad. Like, the show should have been canceled after one season. Like, this is not a promising second season here.
Yeah, I think that, we heard the vote of confidence for Zach already. And it's kind of something that, like, we've touched on, that, like, Morris's role is being a CEO. And so, like, with the team, with him coming out and saying that, like, he's not going to do anything with Zach, I kind of get it, because he already, got his off season in which he could make his coaching changes, and he decided that, like, Zach was good enough. He's told management, like, hey, no, Zach's fine. We're gonna get this thing going, and we're gonna see the progression we want. And he got rid of Lake. He got rid of Jay Rogers. And so that's kind of it for him in terms of mulligans on his OC hires. I don't think that they're gonna give him another opportunity mid-season to fire a guy. And it's just kind of put this team in a difficult spot because, you really do have to buy in then to what you're doing. And I like you said, it's hard to kind of pinpoint, what really the issue is, whether it's, they think they can just win off vibes. I do think there's this kind of, like, somewhat small bit of arrogance in that, like, yeah, no, we're, like, everything that's happened to us is just, like, whatever, not our fault. Like, we're going to be fine. We're going to fix it. And it's just kind of like, it doesn't really work like that. And they're really just kind of, marching to the beat of their own drum, which is something that we've seen them do every year. They don't really care. But if you're not proving that marching to the beat of your own drum leads to winning or leads to consistent football play or things like that, people are going to start poking holes in everything that you do. And I mean, at this point, like Zach, I think some of it's a bit extreme, but like, what can you do? The offense hasn't changed. Everything is looks back, the exact same. And so, Raheem set the tone by firing Ike Hilliard after a blowout. And so when you come back after this blowout and you do like first of all, we got to stop saying we got out Atlanted, because that does not mean what you think it means, Raheem. It does not mean what you think it means. Like, that's kind of like,
that's
possible. That bit of arrogance I'm talking about. I'm like, what do you mean we got out Atlanted? You can't say that 2 weeks in a row. It's like, it just kind of seems like there's this like distance from reality and like what's actually happening, and what he thinks is happening in his own mind.
Yeah. And you mentioned the Ike Hilliard thing, and I'm going to go back to that because we both, I think, had strong opinions about that firing when it happened, and none of it has. I don't know that we'll ever have these things corroborated. Ike Hilliard, if you want to drop a note, like anonymously, off record, just for my I just want to know, so we can keep it off record, obviously, but. I feel stronger than ever that we were on the right track about that firing, that Ike Hilliard was just the first person to tell Zach Robinson to his face that the scheme I would say like, oh, the scheme is broken and we need to fix it. He probably said something a little bit more pointed than that, would be my guess, because Ike Hilliard is a professional. I would argue that Ike Hilliard is probably the most other than Dwayne Ledford, maybe the most respected coach on that offense in terms of like his experience and history in the NFL. He was a big get for this staff. To fire a wide receivers coach just a few games into a season is very unusual. It's very unusual. It's not something you see. So that alone was strange. And then everything afterwards with Ray McCloud, who obviously took that firing pretty tough. And Ike was Ray's guy, but he wasn't just Ray's guy. Like, all the receivers were big fans of Ike Hilliard. It's obvious to me that Hilliard was, if he did this is pure speculation, guys, but if Hilliard did raise concerns about the direction of the offense, like, he was correct. And it just seems like everyone is starting to raise these concerns and they just keep ignoring it. Like, Zach hasn't really made any changes. Raheem Morris says they don't need to make any changes, that he trusts Zach completely. And they just keep blaming everything on execution, and this is not going to fly. Like, this is a terrible way to run a team. We are 8 weeks in. The offense is one of the worst scoring units in the NFL. Don't quote me total yardage. I don't want to hear that. It doesn't matter how many yards you get if you don't score. Scoring is play design. Scoring is cleverness. Scoring is unpredictability. You can get yards by just being talented, and the Falcons are very talented. There's no doubt about that. People that think the Falcons don't have the talent, maybe against the Dolphins they were a little short-handed at receiver, sure, but they're talented enough to be a good offense. I have no doubt that a competent offensive coordinator would have this as a top 10 offense. So what's left is that the quarterback change, which was injury-based, that didn't produce any results. And in fact, it produced a really pissed off Kirk Cousins on the sideline who was screaming basically and pleading at Zach Robinson. I don't know what was said, but this offense seems so disjointed. It's so we got Kurt Warner calling out the Falcons offense. And like, I don't know why Kurt Warner would be possessed to watch this Falcons offense in the first place. But if he's going out of his way to be like, yo, this is bad, I mean, it's everything you need to know. And then Raheem's like, yeah, we feel confident. We just need to execute better. You can't execute your way out of this. Like, at a certain point, you need your offensive coordinator to get off his high horse and admit to himself that what he's designed is not good enough. And we need to make some changes.
Yeah. When it comes to the whole Ike situation, the fact is that the receiver mistakes have not stopped. The miscues between the quarterback and the receivers are still there. I think that one of the things Kirk seemed to be really fired up about was the fact that like David Sills ran the wrong route or something of that nature. I gotta be honest though, it kind of feels like when Kirk's in, suddenly the quarterback's doing a lot more pointing on field, doing a lot more like you're doing stuff wrong, whatever.
I'm not
Just
sure
seems to
who
be
made the
like,
mistake, but they
I'm not
made
sure
three
who
of
made the
them.
mistake,
So
but those
yeah,
mistakes seem a lot more visible when Kirk's in there. And I've been kind of worried about this whole yardage thing, which is kind of why I've been like a little like Scrooge about all those stats, including for the defense. And we're seeing why now, especially for this run defense, why I like literally I don't care about these yardage stats. Because like you said, like, okay, great. Like you move the ball, 50 yards. And you got like on the edge of field goal range. The Falcons, I mean, they kicked a 45-yarder, so that was great to see. But most of their drives don't end in points, don't end in a field goal, and they end in like burning out at around the 20 or the 15. It seems like whenever they get past, if they can get past the 15-yard line, then they usually do all right. But they struggle heavily in that area, and so in my head, I'm thinking like Raheem's thinking of 2015 Atlanta Falcons, and he's like, well, that offense moved the ball well, but they struggled in the red zone. They figured things out. It's going to get back. I feel like he's coming back to these moments in his career because he often references these different points of time in which he's had to make decisions as a head coach. He did this with like Penix talking about going off of Byron Leftwich to Josh Freeman when he was a rookie, and he always is referencing things. And so in my head, I'm like, Raheem was an offensive coach during that little stint. He's definitely thinking that like things can get handled out and this offense can get things going back together. And like, I'll be honest, like there's some things where I'm like, the way the O-line came out and played those like opening drives, I'm like, that is execute. That is just them literally piss poor. Like we're playing the Dolphins. These guys suck, but we don't have to be on our P's and Q's. But like that goes back to coaching. And so it's kind of one of those things where it's like you're talking about where it's like, okay, well, if you think, the execution isn't up to par, why do you think they came out and took this team lightly? Like what happened during this week that made them think that, oh, you're 3-3, so you can just treat the Dolphins like they're a scrub team? The Falcons, from a general standpoint now at this point, are one of the like worst teams in the league. Yeah, they've got 3 wins. Great. The 4 losses are some of like the worst losses. 2 of those losses are the worst losses of the year across the league. So, at this point, you can't really just, like you're saying, Kevin, execute your way out of it because these are issues that run deeper than execution. We're seeing stuff like, why is Kirk Cousins checking to 4th and 7 to a Kyle Pitts screen?
That shouldn't even be an option. like
I hear people talking about pistol when things like that are happening. I'm like, you do not need to worry about the
we
pistol.
We are so
formation.
far away from that being an issue.
Formation issues don't matter like right now. Like I wish that was the biggest issue we had was like the formation we're running. But it's, we see Zach dial up one real looking play action call a game that works, and then everything disappears. Nothing comes back. And it's kind of just one of these things where it's like, there seems to be no holistic approach to this offense, to this team. They don't look prepared for different segments of the game. We haven't talked about it yet. The run, the defense this week was pretty disappointing in just kind of terms of like what they thought they were going to do, and just kind of like what they didn't do. They talked about committee approach at linebacker. Some of the things they talked about doing during the week probably would have actually helped the defense out if they had done them, but they were, again, it's kind of weird seeing this really shift to stubbornness on that side of the ball because there's been so much flexibility. And I get it. They were dealing with more injuries this week. Maybe they didn't want to stretch certain bench or depth players thin, things of that nature, but something has to change for that side of the ball going into next week too.
Yeah. We're definitely going to spend some time on the defense today too. I mean, we all know the offense is public enemy number 1, but I think Ulbrich made some very questionable decisions. This was his worst game, and There's going to be a whole section of JD Bertrand takes, unfortunately. JD, turn off the show now to protect your sanity, because this is not necessarily about you. I mean, it's a little bit about you, but this isn't really about you. Like, so I don't want, we're not trying to this isn't like I just hate JD Bertrand. I'm going to punch JD Bertrand. So this isn't about that. But, this is your warning, JD. You got about 5 minutes, and you probably want to turn this one off. But, to kind of, put a bow on the offensive stuff, there's a couple things. You mentioned the 4th and 7 screen to Pitts. My wife was like, is there any, and shout out to Caroline, because she's really trying to get to she's like, you talk about this being a bad call. Can you explain why this is a bad call? And that's a great question. And it's like, in a vacuum, a screen pass is not a bad call, right? Like now doing it to Kyle Pitts, we have concerns with. Like that should be like an occasional like misdirection type of play that you throw a screen to a tight end. If they threw that to Bijan, at least you could say like, well, Bijan actually has a chance to make the 3 players miss that he would need to make miss to get a first down there. So at least you could ask for a Bijan miracle. There's like a 0% chance of Kyle Pitts breaking 3 tackles there because he's a tight end. But she was like, would there be any situation on that 4th and 7 where you would want to call a screen? And I was like, well, if they sent like a 0 blitz, then maybe like that, because then they have no one home to defend the screen to defend the screen, and maybe Pitts only needs to make one guy miss. So yes, like there probably is a situation where but that was not a jailbreak blitz. That wasn't even close to that. So like it was a bad call, and I don't know why Kirk would check into that play. I also like that being your outlet play there. Like,
why is that the check?
Yeah, why is that the check? Where's Bijan? Where the hell is Bijan Robinson? Like, I mean, just like even like a Bijan draw play would have had a higher chance of success, like in that situation. So. You can't you can't throw short of the sticks on 4th down. I mean, it's just it's not gonna. It's so low percentage chance, and you have to take a risk there. But that was just one example. But like the one thing I keep going back to, Jordan Brooks of the Dolphins. I love Jordan Brooks coming out. I'm really glad after like, kind of like a sketchy rookie year, he really turned it on and turned into a really good linebacker. Like he had a great game. Every single thing that he was triggering instantly, and he was never wrong, ever. And to me, that's like, some people are like, oh well, he's just super instinctual. He knew the plays, man. Like Jordan Brooks is very instinctual, and like I would say if you aggressively like run blitz or do things and you're very instinctual, you'll be right about 50% of the time, and that's great because on those 50% of plays you'll get big plays. Brooks never missed. Not once did he make the wrong decision or go to the wrong spot or go to the wrong gap or get fooled by any sort of misdirection. He knew the plays. Like, unless you're Nostradamus, like you're not going to be right 100% of the time. And I didn't see a single instance on film where he like triggered incorrectly, and he did it so fast. I think they're telegraphing what they're doing, and everyone's starting to pick up on it. And like, you're absolutely right about the offensive line. This was their worst game of the year. But part of it, I think, is that teams are triggering on these plays and they know exactly where the ball's going. So the offensive line is kind of like, defenses are almost beating them to their spot because they already know what's happening. Like you see Charlie Werner go in motion to the left. It's like, okay, they're running left. They're going to do a Y insert here. Like how many times can we run the same Y insert and expect it to work? Like, so like there is some execution things like you mentioned that have to be fixed. Like you have to have like if the offensive line just makes their blocks, like you could still have positive plays even if the defense knows the play. That's kind of what short yardage is, right? It's like 3rd and 1, we need to get a yard. The defense knows it's probably going to be a run. We still just have to block it up. Like you're not always going to have the benefit of surprise, but there's no benefit of surprise. And the Falcons playbook seems so small that it's just been figured out, and it's making everything extremely difficult for these players. And I'm trying to figure out like the root of it. I mean, I know we've kind of realized that they telegraph what they're doing with certain motions. I think certain formations or certain players going in motion also kind of suggest what play is happening. But I also think there's just not very many plays that they run. Like everything seems to be variations off of the same theme, which is not necessarily like bad on its own. I mean, we see the Rams have a lot of success by marrying their pass and run game concepts out of similar looks, but the difference, it's night and day to how it works, and it's because of the way the Falcons executed it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think that like it's one of those things too where you just really don't, it's hard to know everything that goes into their game planning for the week. It sounds like, I mean, they talk about the offense being, complicated and the playbook being thick, but like you said, it feels like we're only accessing like, maybe the first chapter of that dense playbook. And, like they did make adjustments. Charlie Warner, the backfield stuff, that was gone. That was done. That was
They
great.
heard that critique, I guess.
Yeah, and look how well that worked for them. So clearly they should keep listening to us. But they like I feel like honestly that, Zach, I don't know if the playbook is my issue with what I see from this offense is that it feels like this playbook's tailored for nobody. It doesn't feel like it's tailored for Bijan. It doesn't feel like it's tailored for Penix when he was in there. It wasn't really tailored for Kirk when he was in there this year or last year. It just kind of feels like it's this scheme, and you just pick it up and anybody can do it. Anybody can run it. And I feel like for that to be true, there has to be a certain level of simplicity to it. There has to be a certain level of genericness, predictability, because if you're not conforming parts of your playbook to the strengths of your players, then it has no real personality. You're going to be able to see certain things because, you're not worried about the ability of, Bijan Robinson to cut back on this play because, the Falcons are an outside zone, primarily to this side. And, when it's Warner being in motion, we know this is going to happen. Like there's certain kind of like you're talking about, there's certain tells, there's certain things that kind of like tip the hand a little bit, but even deeper than that, I just kind of feel like if you're not building this playbook around the strengths of your team and your players, then you don't really know where you're going throughout a game. And what I mean by that is like when you have to make those game adjustments, when you have to make, changes and things like that, it just kind of feels like this team is always stuck in its spot because they're like, oh, well, we just kind of like drew up these plays for the week, or we said we were just going to run this. And like, I don't know. I don't really have a package for X, Y, Z in these scenarios. It just kind of feels like the team is always just like you're saying, we're going to just go out and execute today. And if we can't execute what we had planned, well, then we're just going to lose because we can't make any adjustments. There's nothing that we're going to be able to do in game to change that.
Yeah, it's frustrating to watch, and it's like I get a generic scheme, sort of a one size fits all scheme for like an initial install, right? Like especially like Zach Robinson year one. Like if he's going with this generic scheme, they weren't really sure who the quarterback was going to be initially. Obviously you get Kirk, but then you get Penix in here and it's like, okay, maybe we want a scheme that either one of these guys can run. So we can train them both up in it, and eventually we're going to transition to Penix, and we don't want it to be too specialized because we're not sure who our quarterback's going to be, and all. There are reasons that you might start out with a scheme like that, but going into year two where it was clear it was going to be Penix, you were not going to go back to Kirk Cousins. Zach Robinson's no longer a first-time play caller. You're expecting now to specialize more, to build around your talent, the guys that you have, that you've seen. You've got a bona fide, number 2 in Darnell Mooney that you can draw stuff up for. Obviously that got derailed by his injury, but you have Drake. Pitts is delivered. Like he is your number 2 passing game option that you've been looking for. I guess a lot of people would say maybe Bijan is the number 2 passing option. Also, what happened to Bijan in the passing game? We just forgot to start to throw the ball to Bijan at this point. Like I don't know what the hell happened there, but it just, like you said, there doesn't appear to be any sort of coherent strategy with this playbook. Like it just feels super generic, and I don't know. Like I do think that it feels unnecessarily complicated. And one of the things I noticed in this game was the overabundance of choice routes. And I think that's causing a lot of problems. And again, it's like people ask like, well, why do you run choice routes? Well, you run choice routes so that way you can have a play call that could take advantage of multiple coverages at the same time, right? So maybe, Drake London's got a route, and if he sees that it's 2 high safeties, he's going to break it this way. And if he sees that it's man, he's going to break it this way because he knows that he's going to have the right positioning. So that way, the play is actually both a cover 2 and man beater for Drake London. So it's a little bit more of a versatile play call. But the problem with choice routes is that it requires the wide receiver to correctly read the defense and make the right decision. And it also requires the quarterback to correctly read the defense and make the right decision. Now, these are professional players. You would expect most of the time this is going to happen, but it injects 2 error points to a single thing. And when you have multiple choice routes on the field at the same time, which the Falcons do, now you're injecting like 4 potential mistakes onto every play. And like, again, these are professionals. You expect people to make the right decision most of the time. But when you're already a mistake-prone, sloppy offense, and you sacrifice a play because one of these 4 people has made a mistake, and now they're in the completely wrong place, it adds up, and it starts to lead to these issues with this team not being able to sustain drives and get into the end zone because, if you're wasting plays and you're already not very efficient, like you're in trouble. And I think it's a lot to ask of a young quarterback like Penix to try to navigate all these choice routes. And I just don't like, to me, it's like I would give like Drake a choice route because I trust Drake to always make the right call. I'm not giving David Sills choice routes. Like, I'm sorry, like no offense, David Sills, but I'm not sure I trust like that. And it's a lot to ask of these players to, like, it just feels unnecessarily complicated when I don't really think it's not providing the benefit that they seem to think it will.
Yeah, I think you said it best really when it's just kind of like if you have 4 guys running choice routes, that's 4, extra opportunities for somebody to make a mistake. And there's some guys that don't need to be running it, like they've got Bijan running them as well. And look, it pays off. And I think maybe if you have 1 on the field or something like that going, that's fine. But it's taking some of these guys too long to make the read themselves. Like, there's been times where I've seen Bijan still in the middle of figuring out what he's going to do. Penix has already hit his back foot and he's waiting to rip the ball. So those things definitely have to get cleaned up. And I think it just kind of goes back to when I think of like, well, why would you have more freedom for those receivers? And it feels like, because like I feel like there's less coaching, involved in that kind of scenario, or it's supposed to make things easier, but not everything's supposed to be easy. And I think that's kind of like you said, like the constant mistakes with receiving, with issues with receiver this year. This was not like a big issue last year, and the biggest difference we've seen is like the installation of all these choice routes. And so I think it's time to kind of scrap those and get back to like what you were doing a little bit more last year, because you're not seeing a good result with your passing attack.
No, and it's like, you don't need a bunch of choice routes if the pass play is well designed. Like, I think you can create spacing by having, good route combos. Like, we're not seeing a lot of these concepts that teams like to employ. And I don't know if it's because they're just not calling the concepts or because there's so many choice routes that we're not actually seeing the concepts play out the way they should. Like, I'm like, where's the dagger? Like, where's the dagger in this offense? We need to see some dagger, please. Like I know a lot of people have been calling for more Texas concepts, and I think that also makes a lot of sense for this team. Like, but it seems like it's become overcomplicated, and they just need to get back to basics. Like, they just run your route and run it correctly, and stop hesitating and stop thinking. And I think you're going to have more success. So it feels like the offense got unnecessarily complicated in that way, while kind of being maybe too simple with how they do other aspects of it. So it's made it predictable and mistake prone at the same time, despite it, like, on paper being this complicated offense where, these receivers could all be doing different things and all this. Well, if they're all doing different things on any given play, that's really hard to track for a quarterback, and it injects a lot of potential problems with these receivers. So that is something I think they could easily do, is just act some choice routes and be like, all right, this is just going to be a go, or this is just going to be a 15-yard out, or you're just going to run a slant here, and not, and if it's this, then you run it a little bit deeper, and if it's this, you run it shallower. And that's not really a choice route, that's more of a positioning thing. So again, this is something they could do. Like, this is not something that should require weeks and weeks to get. It's just like, okay, well, on, this play nomenclature, it's like, okay, but we're going to axe this choice route for the Z. Like, you're just going to run a go. So just run the go. And if Penix sees single coverage, then this is going to move up the priority list of reads. But otherwise, it's mostly a clear out or whatever. Just little simple changes, simplify a couple of things. I think they got to diversify their motions. Like, just like it's not even that complicated. Like they're playing mostly 12 personnel. It's the same personnel, just instead of having the tight end motion every time you're running and the wide receiver motion every time you're passing, just mix them up slightly. And I guarantee they'll catch someone like thinking they have the play read, like for the first few times they do that. Like they'll probably get big plays off of it. But they just haven't made any effort. And I think that's the most frustrating thing is like there are small changes they can make. And would these result in the offense all of a sudden being like an elite unit or being great at scoring overnight? No, but I think it could be enough to get them off the mat because right now they are putrid. They are one of the worst scoring offenses and just offenses in general in the NFL. And it's just, it almost doesn't make any sense given the talent level. It almost has to be schematic at this point.
Yeah, I think there's really nothing else that can be said, I think, in terms of like what, this offense has to do or what their issues are. I think that's probably what's so frustrating is that it is so clear that there's something wrong with what they do schematically, with how they approach, being in opponent territory. And if Zach doesn't figure it out, if they can't, right this ship, then, to me, it just kind of seems like, everybody's going to be gone at the end of this year. And that's, obviously we don't want to just keep people around and just be like, oh, well, they're going to get it right. We want to have the best people for the job. But like, this isn't what you want for Michael Penix, right? And this whole thing has made evaluating him that much more difficult. And, we kind of have to almost grade him on a curve at this point because there are things that are happening in this offense that wouldn't be happening if he were in other places. I don't think it's out of the question to say that he would be getting better coaching in other facilities at this point. And so, when it comes to, what matters most, when looking at this season, like I totally understand everybody wants to win and make the playoffs, but like, we need to make sure that like we can salvage Penix's development and that this is the guy because there is no first round pick next year. Whoever comes in, if anything major were to happen, regime change is basically going to have to sell to the front office that they believe in Penix and that they can salvage the last 3 years of his contract and keep this thing going where Zach Robinson and Raheem Morris could not. But it's never good to just kind of know that, there's a good chance that your quarterback's going to get handed, a new playbook after he probably just got comfortable with the one that he got drafted into as a rookie. So we're going to have to go through that all over again. He's going to have to do a new install. There's going to be a new culture set, everything. And it's just not what you want to deal with in the offseason. You just want to roll into the offseason, oh, man, we finished 10-7 wild card loss, that's the stepping stone that everybody wanted to hit this year, right? Was just kind of getting into that playoff feeling again. But it at this point, it kind of feels like getting to 6 or 7 wins is going to be, a dogfight, and they've got 10 games left. So they can even they could run the table and change this whole thing if they wanted to. But when we look at what's most likely going to happen here, we're probably going to see some more volatile play. But what matters most at this point is salvaging Penix and his development.
I agree, and I still think they're going to just get 8 wins because this is what this team does. Like they're going to inexplicably do it. And that's not going to be good enough. But
it's winning 5 of their last 10. I could definitely see it.
They're going to do it. Like I have a lot of people are like, oh well, they're just going to bottom out now. No, they won't. Yeah.
Not how this team operates.
First time. Yeah. Now, luckily we're not squandering our first round pick, at least in this scenario. So there's that, but, they're going to defy expectations. They're going to continue to that's this to me, like the team is talented. They're better on defense than we ever expected. The talent level on defense is higher than we thought it was going to be. The offense is very talented. The scheme is just ridiculous. And like that does give you hope for attracting a good head coach, because I think a head coaching candidate would look at this roster and be like, this is better than like an 8-win roster. Whoever was here before was just squandered this team. And again, like I do think like Mike McDaniel's probably still going to get fired by the Dolphins. I would give him the call because again, I don't know like what better options you're going to have. And, sometimes guys just need a reset. We know his offensive scheme is very good. And he's used to working with a left-handed quarterback. I mean, Tua and Penix get way too many comparisons. They're not really similar in really many ways other than the fact that they're left-handed, but he does already have a left-handed quarterback playbook. So that aspect of it would be nice. But I wonder if McDaniel could keep Ulbrich around, who, I mean, as long as Ulbrich doesn't keep playing JD Bertrand, I'm fine with Ulbrich sticking around, but that's where we're going to go out in just a moment, guys. But just I think this roster is too good to be languishing like this. And I think Ulbrich showed you like the defense is not like bad. Obviously they were missing kind of all of their best run defenders this week, and they're very thin at linebacker. We can see that. No Zach Harrison, no Jalen Walker, maybe your two best like run defending defensive linemen. It's just, this was a bad situation for them, and Ulbrich obviously didn't play it very well either. So we're going to go to Ulbrich next. But I mean, on the defensive side, this was probably their worst game. The Dolphins really seemed to flummox them with that extra offensive lineman. The Falcons didn't really respond to it, which I found strange. Like, sometimes they like added a third safety, but they didn't ever really consider adding an extra defensive lineman or like an extra linebacker. Like, they outright refused to consider Josh Woods playing a single snap. They did play Ronnie Harrison a little bit. Mm-hmm. But like, this obsession with JD Bertrand is one of the most bizarre things, because Ulbrich like was almost perfect. Like, I would say like he called the defense almost perfectly outside of like that one blitz call that I thought was insane. Like, I didn't have too many criticisms. I thought he has really handled this personnel well. They've managed to cover up all their deficiencies. They've managed to weather some injuries. Divine Diablo seems like he was the linchpin of this whole thing, and now it's falling apart. But I think part of the reason it's falling apart is because the guy you replaced your linchpin with is a ghost. And like, you can't just paper over middle linebacker. Like, you can't just be like, well, the middle linebacker is going to do nothing for us and it's going to be okay. Like, that was one of the worst. I'm sorry, JD, turn it off now. That was one of the worst games I've ever seen from a linebacker. And you hit on it. There's like it's like you're watching him on a tape delay. And he's just not moving. It's like, buddy, like, I need you to at least stick your head in a gap, get somewhere, fill some kind of space, instead of just standing there and waiting for the guard to climb and take you out every play. Like, I mean, that was a rough watch. And I don't understand how Ulbrich could watch that and not consider. I mean, I'm not saying, maybe he did consider changing it and he was like, well, we're already like getting blown out, so I'm not going to bother. But one of the most, like, this is making me question everything with Ulbrich. Like, how can you not see what's going on here? So,
yeah, the 6 lineman thing, like, the Dolphins have done that all year, and they were 1-6 coming into the game. So it's not like it's something they're good at doing. McDaniel's kind of like, I don't have a blocking tight end, and this is kind of like what we have to do. I thought that, when you don't have Jalen Walker out there, kind of like thinking like, okay, maybe you do, like you're saying, want to respond to that a little bit, maybe have, maybe get more in your 5-man front looks. And I think that's why the Dolphins were doing their 6-man stuff, because the Falcons were doing some of their 5-man stuff. But, no Zach, no Billy, no Jalen. So, 3 best run defenders and the best defensive lineman on the team out from the game. Divine Diablo out from the game, dealing with a lot of injuries. But like you said, like, going into this week, it was not like a secret, like that JD Bertrand was all like, JD Bertrand was already under fire because he came in the 49ers game and it looked bad. He didn't look as bad as he did in the Dolphins game. But I thought it was still pretty bad. And that says a lot about this performance that we just saw. So Ulbrich and then we're kind of already put like on the spotlight, being like, hey, like, is this guy, you planning on running him out there again as the starter? And they're like, no, we're going to we're going to replace Divine Diablo by committee. It was not by committee. Bertrand was pretty much out there every single snap. And like you said, Kevin, like not trying to dogpile on the guy, which by the way, there will be an entire piece talking about JD Bertrand today with
Speaking
film
of not
cutting
dogpile.
up everything on going on. But not to dogpile on the guy, but you're just seeing kind of like very amateuresque processing. It's taken him about 2 or 3 seconds to figure out what's going on. He's about the last person to move on every single play. I don't think offensive linemen have ever had an easier time blocking somebody at the second level in their lives. I mean, there's an impressive block from the center on a stretch play where Bertrand is basically, at an angle about 5 yards away from him, and he's able to get reached, and he already has the lead on where the ball is going. And so you see the length and lack of athleticism show up in coverage. There's a couple of windows that were not there with Divine Diablo that like Bertrand just can't cover. He tried to put his arm up at one point, fully stretched out, and that ball just goes right over him. No issue. He doesn't have good zone instincts. I think that he's done a little bit better when he kind of is just like, that's your guy, man coverage, whatever. But when he's in zone, he has very bad feel for who's coming in, who's coming out. That touchdown to Washington, I mean, that was like, it looked like somebody literally switched it, like someone playing Madden, and then they switched to him at the last second, and he just suddenly he realizes that he hasn't moved and that there's a guy right next to him, and then he just lets him go. He's about 2 full steps in front of him. They score a touchdown. He had other issues in coverage where he's clearly the only man in the flat. They have a running back going out there in the flat, and he just lets the running back get to the sideline, and then he goes to catch up to him, misses. And it was just kind of like one embarrassing play after another. And there were things that I could salvage out of the 49ers game. And I posted some good plays. There just was not really much to salvage out of this performance. The only plays he made was when, he got lucky enough that the running back came right at him. And Ronnie Harrison, I thought looked okay. I think that he definitely benefited because he got to play on the edge of the box, whereas Bertrand was more in the middle. But, I think Ronnie Harrison, every play that he was in, he at least took a step forward in the right direction. He was hitting somebody, and if he went the wrong direction, he went there at full speed. Like what I couldn't really understand, because it goes against everything Ulbrich believes philosophically, is that this dude does not fly around. He does not run through someone's face every play. He does not do any of the things that Jeff Ulbrich preaches about that he likes having from his linebackers. And so for me, it's really hard to understand how this guy made it through preseason when he was clearly one of the worst linebackers on the roster. Then there were multiple guys who did not make the cut, who had better performances than him. How it lasted, after the 49ers game, and why he wasn't pulled during the Dolphins game, especially since there was supposedly some plan to do a by committee approach. He's just a 5th round pick, guys. Like, I'm like, sorry, Terry.
Yeah.
Like, I know
it's not a
that,
second rounder where it's like, we got to give this guy every chance. Like,
I don't get it. Like, I don't, I know Terry doesn't want to take another hit to his, especially this year, with everything under fire. But like, this is a loss, man. This is a lost cause. This is not this is not an NFL defender. I think he's been fine when he's on special teams, but I don't think anybody would roster this guy on their team based on what we've seen this year, dating back to preseason.
Yeah, and it's one thing if he's a rookie, right? And it's like, okay, maybe just he's not caught up to NFL speed. He needs more time. We're just going to let him sit on the bench as like a deep reserve player, probably be a game day inactive, whatever. This is year 2. You've had 2 training camps under your belt. You've had tons of film session. You've had tons of opportunity. And I'm sorry, but like 5th round picks shouldn't get this much runway. It would be one thing if he was playing like okay, because then it's like, okay, yeah, that's fine. Like that's all we're really asking for in Divine Diablo. We just need okay. He's a ghost out there. And like I at this point, it's like I when I'm looking at players, I want to see what, like, I usually go from like a lot of evaluators preach, what can you do for me? And I don't know what he can do at this point because he doesn't tackle with any power. He always gets drug. He doesn't have the instincts. He doesn't fill quickly or make quick decisions. He can't cover. Like you said, his zone instincts are bad. He doesn't get the necessary depth. He doesn't threaten those routes behind him at all. Like, Tua was just throwing it above his head over and over and over. He didn't even care. Like, he didn't even think about it. Divine Diablo's there. Divine Diablo probably has 2 picks. Like, because
Divine Diablo would have had 2 picks yesterday for sure.
And they probably just wouldn't have thrown it behind Divine Diablo because that's the type of respect he started to command. But he doesn't provide anything. And you could go out and sign like a 33-year-old thumper today that would give you much better run defense than what you're getting out of JD Bertrand. You could go get a guy off the street. I'm going to pull up Over the Cap right now. I'm going to find a 33-year-old thumper that I know for a fact is going to give me better run defense right this minute. Completely, like, no prep off the street. Like, we're gonna pull this up and I'm gonna find this out. But give me a couple minutes. But yeah, like, they already have really guys too. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is like, when you look at it from the player's perspective, it's like, this was your chance to kind of give the team a reason to just move on from Troy this season. Like, I almost feel like that's what this whole, like, force him out there on the field to see if we can make this happen, because I don't know if the team's kind of done with the Troy Anderson saga or whatever's going on there. But this was a career defining moment for this player where he could have secured the linebacker 3 job. He could have, secured, his NFL livelihood and become a vested vet. If he had just locked in for these 2 performances, and that's pretty much slipped away from him at this point. Now we're talking about, like, is this guy going to make the team next year? Like, I mean, he's going to have a target on his back as long as he's in Atlanta now, because this has just been, an unacceptable string of performances. But, you hate to see another investment kind of just, go up in flames, a year removed. And, like, it was only a 5th round pick, but 5th round picks are valuable. Those aren't nothing. So, it's just, unfortunate that this is kind of the situation Atlanta is in. And when we just look at how they built this room this season, where, like, the thumper has always kind of been missing. They've had a lot of like, Ronnie Harrison's a safety. This is kind of like, when things got bad during the DQ years with linebacker play, this was, like, kind of one of the issues, that it was like, we have a bunch of very small guys, and our athletic dude who's usually able to handle everything is hurt or dealing with injuries of his own. And so now we have to turn to this smaller group of linebackers who get washed out of the run really easily, or they don't have the length to compensate for their short size in pass protection, in coverage. And so, we're seeing, one of the side effects of kind of building out a smaller linebacker room. But the thing that's frustrating with Bertrand is that, like, I don't think Ulbrich would have ever drafted him, because he does not have the speed that he usually, values, and he will look past somebody's smaller size if they have that speed. Bertrand does not have any of that. And it's just kind of, it just seems like a bad fit at this point.
Yeah. Okay. I got it. I got my guy. Kaiser White. He's on the Titans. He's on the Titans practice squad. Yeah. Is he a great run defender? No, he's, in 2024, he actually was graded out really well.
I bet he'll move
But he
forward.
can cover. He can cover. Former safety. Like, I would sign Kaiser White today. Like, no hesitation. Like, he's on the Titans practice squad. Like, go get him. Why hasn't he been signed already? Like,
I don't know. He's still in the league.
He's 29. Like, it's like, I don't get it, man. Like, we can do better than JD Bertrand. It took me 5 minutes. It took me less than 5 minutes to go look at a free agent list, and figure this out. And it's like, Nick Vigil's out there. Like, look, Nick Vigil's 32, but, like, Vigil is, like, a semi-competent reserve linebacker, which is way more. Yeah, we need the vigilante at this point. I'll take anybody. Go get Quan. Go get Quan off the bench. How about a Devondre Campbell reunion? It seems like he's having some issues maybe, but, like, at this point, I'll try anything. It's not gonna be expensive. So, look, we got the coaching staff back that he likes, right? So we got Ulbrich back in here. So, there's options. There are options out there, and I think they need to start considering them. Josie Jewell's out there. Josie Jewell's decent. I mean, I think Jewell's probably better than anyone they have. Same thing, Kaiser White. Like, Jawan Bentley, he's out there. Like, I would kick the tires on some of these people. Like, I think the time, like, who knows when like, if this was like a 2-week absence for Diablo, it's like, okay, you want to see what you got in Bertrand, see if he can paper it over. That's fine. We know he can't, and Divine Diablo might not be coming back. Like, I don't know. So at this point, something's got to give. You got to go find somebody, because this is not going to work.
And you're now you're behind the ball, right? Like, this was the week to do the buy committee thing so that you could see what else you had in the room, so you could decide if you needed to hit the free agent market. Trade deadline's November 4th. And so, it's just really, it didn't make any sense in terms of how they handled that situation, because now you're behind. Again, in terms of your own self-evaluations, you're behind the ball a week. You could have been ahead of schedule. You could have had a better idea of whether Ronnie Harrison was going to fit well in there, or if you needed to turn to Malone, or if you needed to turn to a heavy dime backer package, or whatever the case is going to be. Next week, I think we probably will see some heavy dime, and we'll probably see some different looks. I don't think that, we'll see Bertrand, back out there. Raheem Morris very rarely says, that X player was not good enough. And he called out and said that JD Bertrand's play was not good enough from a general standpoint. He did do his normal Raheeming, in which he, then was like, well, but actually did it. And I think that's like protecting the player. He doesn't want to add on to the issues at hand. I think everybody saw what happened. And it was probably really rough. I mean, we've seen viral videos of how these film watches can go for guys sometimes. This was probably a rough one for Bertrand.
And again, it's like, I feel like it's you're doing him a disservice. Like, you're destroying his NFL career with every snap you're putting him out there, and he's not ready. Like, he's clearly not ready. He's not comfortable. I think Bertrand's best fit is playing Ellis's role. And even that's not great, but like Bertrand blitzing and just running forward and just filling gaps aggressively, and that's all he has to worry about. That's a much better fit for where he is, like, mentally at this point. But like, Ellis is out there, so like, you're not taking Ellis off to put Bertrand. So that's probably what he can do for you. That's like semi-passable, but middle linebacker, like, that's a huge ask for that. That is one of the most important positions on this defense. And when you're getting nothing out of that player, like, the Dolphins attacked Bertrand almost every play. The game plan was to go after JD Bertrand, and the Falcons just left him out there to get roasted over and over. I feel bad for him. Like, stop this. Like, throw the towel on JD Bertrand. Get that man out of there. He's bruised and bleeding. Like, it's not good for him. It really caused the whole defense to crumble. Because it was such a liability. So it just, Ulbrich, you have the benefit of the doubt. You've been the one coach so far that has, like, definitely earned their keep more than anyone else. But we got to do something. We got to do something. We can't keep doing this. We can't keep doing JD Bertrand. So, it's rough stuff. But all right. Well, before we sign off, let's take a brief look ahead. Falcons Patriots this weekend.
That's how we'll leave you guys.
We'll leave you guys with some depression at the end of this show, in case you weren't depressed enough. Falcons only 5.5-point road underdogs to the Patriots. That feels strange, but this is per FanDuel as well, guys. So we have that. So we're I guess it could be worse. But yeah. I don't really see the Falcons being competitive in this game, but they do seem to play up to their competition. So they'll probably come out against the Patriots and like look really competent. And they'll play their best game of the season against the Colts. And then they'll go get blown out by the Jets afterwards. Like, they're going to win these next two games inexplicably, get above 500, and then get blown out by the Jets. That, I think, is the most Falcons outcome imaginable.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Beat the Patriots, I don't think you're beating the Colts.
No,
man.
I don't think so. Yeah.
They got owner on the sideline, Cruella DeVille maxing. She's got it figured out. She's making fools of us all. I was laughing at her and talking about, I'm going to be on the sideline asking whatever that woman is asking the coaching staff. Take notes, people. pretty soon we're going to see Baby Blank on the sideline with a clipboard next to Zach Robinson, figuring out, okay, now, why did Kirk just check that ball to Kyle Pitts? What's going on here,
So
Coach?
4th and 7 screen. What are we
4th
doing?
and 7.
So
That's
Zach,
really
what's your thought
really
process?
The check, huh, Zach?
I mean,
look, Baby Blake was a part of the best draft class we've seen in many years. So who knows? Maybe he's gonna have it all figured out.
yeah.
But yeah, Kevin. I think I think I'm with you, and that's because we've seen this with the Falcons team so often that the idea of them losing all 10 of these next games is just so funny because they don't operate like that. They're very likely going to split them 50-50, and they're going to win the games where you're like, oh, well, they'll definitely beat so-and-so and then lose to the really good such and such. No, sorry. They'll probably split the really good teams, split the really bad teams, and then leave you wondering, where the hell do we go from here into the offseason?
Yeah, this team is so confusing. It's difficult to evaluate because it's like, I just saw you beat the shit out of the Buffalo Bills and then go get your ass kicked by the Miami Dolphins in your home stadium. Like, I don't understand how to like make those two things apply to the same team. It just doesn't make any sense. So, I just my mind is blown and I have no more answers for this team. But this loss I think really does signal that like there need to be wholesale changes made. I can't forgive 2 of these type of losses. If they pull off a miracle and get to 10 wins, and make the playoffs, I'll eat my words, right? Like if they figure it out, like great for them. I think I said on the
prove me
show,
wrong.
yeah, I'll buy a jersey and I'll let the fans vote on what jersey it's going to be. So I'll let the show runners here. We'll vote on what jersey.
Custom made 6'7" jersey.
I was that or Felipe. I figured people would be like, oh yeah, you have to buy Felipe Franks or something. The GOAT Felipe Franks on the hands team. We didn't even talk about that play.
We didn't talk about the Franks man. We're gonna disappointing performance.
Yeah, we'll close on that. Because I also want to shout out Bradley Pinion because that was a perfect kick. Like that was picture perfect onside, exactly the distance, the perfect bounce. If you have Kyle Pitts running that play, I bet Pitts recovers that. I don't know why Pitts wasn't
let
there.
Pitts run vertical, Kevin. Come on.
Yeah, that's true. That's right. You figured it out. Yeah. But yeah, just. So I wanted to shout out Bradley Pinion because that was an incredible kick. Just fantastic. And also Felipe Franks like single-handedly derailed like 3 drives and like dropped that onside kick. Not that it would have mattered with the onside kick, but like
it is a rough day for
Frank. He killed them like multiple times.
Marquise like never gets in players' faces, and he was like after him after that second penalty. I was like, oh yeah, dude, you're in the doghouse now. I'm like, that's the nice coach that like feels like he never has to do that. Oh man, yeah, gotta hand it to Franks. He felt that the tide was turning and that fans were coming around, and he was
the
like,
Franks tank. Yeah,
let me remind you who I am.
Oh man,
and yeah, but I think he said like the kick by Pinion, man, what an onside kick. I am getting a little squirmish about these like once a game shanks, but you know what?
Yeah.
Like Bradley Pinion, you're the least of my worries, man. Yeah. I'm sorry I even put that on the airwaves. Just keep doing your thing. Hopefully we continue to get blessed with an onside kicks that we saw and that they're actually recovered, because that really never happens anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah. So I had to give Pinion his props for that because that was just picture perfect.
It was.
Yeah. Really like, and no one's going to talk about it. So we got to give the players that really do go out there and play their ass off some love, because we might not get a lot of positivity going forward. We'll see. But guys, thank you for joining us here on Tuesday Takes. Falcons have hit rock bottom again. You shouldn't hit rock bottom twice, but we have. So hope, I don't really have a whole lot of hope left for this season. Obviously, in terms of record, it's all still in front of them. They're only 1 game below 500. Like, there's not any reason they can't. But you guys saw that game, right? you know why there's not a lot of hope. So we'll see how they respond. knowing them, they'll probably respond and like just come out and beat the Patriots for no reason, and then play a great game against the Colts. I don't think they're gonna win that game, like Tre'Shon said, but and then we'll go get blown out by the Jets. So we'll look forward to that, nightmare like slide over the next 3 weeks. But it's still all in front of them technically, and like I don't really want to be having the conversations about looking for a new coaching staff again. But at this point, that seems to me like the most likely scenario is they're going to finish 8-9 or so and be looking for a new staff once again. So we'll see. But thanks for hanging out with us. We'll be here for you. We'll have our group therapy sessions here every week. Appreciate Tre'Shon Diaz coming in. He's at Trey3Sean. What's going on all Trey phases this week, Tre'Shon? Or maybe I don't even know if you're going to stomach it. I mean, I don't blame you, but
I don't. We'll see. I was like, well, I've already cut up so much JD Bertrand film, but you know what, man, I got a whole hit piece coming out on the guys.
Yeah.
So I got to find some new material. We'll see. Maybe we'll talk about Kirk Cousins or all the other exciting things that happened on this past Sunday, but we're still at the drawing board.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I was like, I'm gonna just watch the condensed film. I'm not doing all 22 for this week, so let's just get through this as quickly as possible.
Not a fun watch.
Yeah, I will say I called Kirk Cousins horrid. I would probably back off of that slightly. I would say like below average. Was probably a more accurate representation. He obviously isn't able to navigate the offensive line playing poorly at all. Like at least Penix sometimes can like step up or move to the side. Like Kirk Cousins just takes the sack. Like and that's, again, people forget that's what you get with Kirk Cousins. But there obviously was a lot of miscommunications and stuff like that. I don't know how much of that was his fault versus the receiver. I feel like it's at least half his fault. But I'll change my characterization to like not great as opposed to horrible. But it's not like it was a good game for him, unfortunately. But still, guys, thank you for joining us. Thanks again to FanDuel for presenting Dirty Birds and Brews today. We will be back on Wednesday night with another Falcaholic Live talking about where the hell this team goes from here. If you enjoyed this semi-rant, semi-film review show here today, please do like and subscribe on YouTube, and also give us that 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. If you want to support the show, patreon.com/Falcaholic Live, also the YouTube channel memberships. We appreciate everyone for hanging out with us and enduring looks like another difficult season. It's still a long way to go, fortunately or unfortunately, we'll see. But we do appreciate everyone for joining us, and appreciate Tre'Shon for hanging in there and helping digest this film. This film gave me indigestion, that's for sure. So thank you guys so much. We'll see you next time on Dirty Birds and Brews. Have a great day, folks.